Hey houseplant friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I'm gonna tell you about my current houseplant favorites. It's been quite a while since we have talked about this, so I hope you have your listening ears ready and you're ready to digest these words that I'm about to speak to you. I really love all of these plants. Some of them you've seen on my list before and others of them you actually haven't. So before we jump into everything, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And yes, I am better from COVID. I unfortunately got COVID. My husband got it from work and I got it from my husband. We even isolated away from each other, but it was too late by the time that we had started isolating. So what can you do? I am better now. I think I'm still sick, like I think I still have it, but I'm functioning. I have literally never slept so much in my life, oh my God. Like the first 4 days that I actually was sick with it, I just slept. That's the only thing I did. The number one plant on my list is going to be the Philodendron ilsamanii, at no surprise to anyone. This plant has always had a really special place in my heart because it's the plant that got me into houseplants in the first place. I was at work back when I was chilling, working as a video editor, and I was like, oh hey, that plant looks really cool. And then I went and I found more photos of the same plant, and then I was like, then I saw even more photos of the same plant and I was like, wait, that's really cool. That's when I fell down the rabbit hole that is houseplant collecting photos and Instagrams and YouTube videos. And that's where everything happened from. The ilsamanii is really special because it kind of just looks like you just sneezed on it and was like, yep, that looks good. That looks great. I love the speckly variegation on it. Also, even though it has so much white on it, or can have so much white on it, I guess, it still photosynthesizes just as fast as plants that are completely green, which is incredible. And it's my personal theory that the plant is actually transposon variegation instead of chimeric variegation because of the fact that it still photosynthesizes so well. With chimeric variegated plants, generally the whiter parts of the plant are a lot weaker, and that's because it's due to like a malmutation, because even though the white looks pretty, it's actually not good for the plant. Versus the ilsamanii is completely, it's not like that at all. I love the ilsamanii. I will always be growing them. I have two right now. They're doing really good. One of them is really tiny and the other one is a little bit bigger. Actually just took a cutting of it and gave it to my friend Evan. It's also like my fastest growing philodendron by far. Like out of all of the ones I have, this one grows the fastest and the easiest for me. I grow it in completely moss as well, so. Oh, and I fertilize with liquid earth, but I think that's it. Next plant! The next plant on my list is Varicosum. And this might be a surprise because mine are always super sun bleached. I love the Varicosum. They are probably one of my favorite plants ever, period. Like actually ever. They have super fuzzy petioles and stems, and the way that they sit like in your enclosures is so beautiful. They have this wonderful pillowy look to them, and there's way many different kinds of Varicosum. There's not just like, oh, there's this one plant. It's like, gosh, there must be like tens and tens of types of them. I only have like the basic form right now, I'm pretty sure. I don't think I have any of the special forms of the Varicosum. I don't really care. I just love Varicosum in general. They also grow really fast and they're really quick to get big and start growing out of the cataphyll. That's when instead of the plant growing out of like a leaf and then a leaf and then a leaf, it actually makes a new stem top and then it grows out of this one new growth point at the top. I don't know if I'm explaining this correctly. Maybe if I'm not lazy enough, I'll include photos, but yeah, the Varicosum are great. They grow in bright to indirect bright light, and they do really great in all of the same humidity situations. The only thing is that with this plant, when you propagate it, you need to be really careful. It's really important that with Varicosum, you air layer it before you cut it, because otherwise you can make it really upset and it could just die on you. They're harder to propagate than most other plants, so keep that in mind. The next plant on my list is gonna be the Begonia Sarawak, and I try to not keep so many begonias on these kinds of lists because I know you guys can just tune out when I start talking about all my begonias. But this one is really incredible. It has a really wonderful leaf shape and it's also iridescent, which means that depending on which way the light is actually hitting the plant, the light is gonna like reflect into different colors off of the plant. It also is technically a viner, except it kind of like grows in a ladder formation. And it also always is blooming. Like this is, if you like plants that bloom, this is a really good begonia to get. My Begonia Sarawaks are quite literally always blooming all of the time. That's something that you'd like, highly recommend. They're just really glittery as well. They're also, if you want to try to get into hybridizing plants, because of the fact that they're always blooming, they also take really well with other plants. So there's that too. But I personally really just like it because of how glittery it is, how bright and shiny it is, how fast it grows. They're so easy to propagate. You can propagate this one by leaf, but you can also just do it in terms of cuttings, like stem cuttings. And if you're wanting to get into learning how to propagate begonias, this is a really great one to start with. The next plant on my list is actually a new one to my list, which is going to be the Hoya Curtisia. This is a plant that I have had a couple different times over in my plant collecting extravaganzas. However, it's one that I have in my collection right now. It's actually quite large. I was able to find one at my local Home Depot and I absolutely adore it. It is so beautiful, so long, and it really creates this like jungle look in your house because of how far it hangs down. Also, unlike almost all of the plants on this list, I actually grow this plant outside of a closed growing situation. I do have Hoya Curtisia inside my cabinets, but this one grows outside of my cabinets and it actually does really well outside of my cabinets. I really like it when plants hang down. I know a lot of people like to string their plants up stuff, but I personally really like it when they're hanging down, and so finding one like this, it just like totally completed the mystical look. And then when you take photos through it, oh my gosh, it just looks so good. 10 out of 10 recommend. It's super easy also for beginners. South-facing light from my window, like direct, bright, south-facing light, dead ass like right onto the plant, and it's sun stressing really nicely. Has lots of speckles. It's doing really good. So highly, highly recommend if you can find these. They're also really cheap if you can find them at a big box store. The next plant I want to mention is my Alocasia Frydeck. This is a plant that I have growing in my IKEA greenhouse cabinet, in my redsta specifically. And it is currently just one leaf. It is a plant I got from my friend Devin, and it came as 2 leaves. Then it gave me 3, and then it went back down to 1, and then I got 2, and then to 3, and now it's back down to 1 again. For me with Alocasia, for some reason, they kind of just like go through phases where you get them to have multiple leaves and then they just kind of fall off. This plant has been pretty easy for me to take care of. It's actually bounced back a couple times from me being super neglectful. If you're worried about kind of pricing on this plant, because I know that it can be quite expensive, I got mine for free from a friend, but if you were to buy one, they're not that hard to take care of as long as you're willing to like water your plants. It's gonna be okay. Mine also, I haven't noticed any reverting. I know that a lot of people when they get these, they're super worried about them reverting. I haven't had that problem with mine. I also got mine from Devin though, and Devin doesn't buy plants unless they're super high quality, so it's possible that you could get one that could then revert. That's always a possibility when you're buying variegated plants, unless you're buying something that has stable variegation like transposon or pattern gene or reflective irrigation or something like that. 10 out of 10 do recommend this plant if you're able to get your hands on it. It's super beautiful, super wonderful. Alocasias are great in general, and they're super pretty. They give you kind of like a whimsical look, and they're not that hard to take care of. However, just so you know, you can't propagate those like everything else. You can't just like cut the stem. Alocasias grow from bulbs, so you can only propagate them by division or tissue culture, so keep that in mind. The next plant I want to talk about is the only other plant, actually no, there's 2 others on this list that are actually just growing out here, and that's going to be my global green pothos. This is a plant I've had for a really long time now. I think we're actually coming up on almost a year that I've had this plant, and it's getting quite big. It would have been doing a whole lot better if I didn't get depressed and go through a whole thing, but you know, life happens. This plant sits and gets direct south-facing light from my south-facing windows. I think I water it like every 2 weeks, and I keep it in a Wally Grow, like kind of self-watering pot, so I never have to take it down. It has this like net in it, so I can like take the plant out and then like fill up the basin with water and then put it back in. It's actually really awesome. It is a $45 pot though, so if you like it, you know, $45 for a plastic pot, but I personally like it, and if they weren't so expensive, I would have more. So the global green pothos is actually the only pothos that I directly own. I'm not a huge fan of pothos actually. I really don't like them generally speaking, but the global green, it's really nice. I really love the pattern. Green on green variegation for me is just kind of like my thing. So for me, this was like a total win. I'm glad I've had it for so long actually. I'm proud of myself because generally with more common plants like this, I'll be really quick to let them die because like you can just buy another one because they're not super expensive, but I'm really glad that I've actually been able to keep this one alive for so long. Next plant I want to talk about is actually going to be my white wizard, which is not a plant I ever really thought would be on my favorite plants list because it doesn't have any red on it. I never thought the white wizard would actually be on my not wish list, but favorites because of the fact that it's missing that red. But lately when I've been looking at mine, I just get really happy with it. And I've had this plant since it was a seedling. I actually got it, it was given to me by Indoor Jungle. I wish I could remember, I'm sorry if you're watching for some reason. But yeah, a shop owner in Arizona actually gave this to me and I really, really love it. I've grown it up from a seedling, like it was given to me as a teeny tiny tissue culture seedling and it has gotten so big since then. And the color on it is truly extraordinary. I feel like generally when I see tissue culture, especially plants, the white doesn't look so good on it, but in my plant, it looks really, really phenomenal. I mean, it's like truly stunning. I love staring at it. It's lately been catching my eye an exceptional amount, which is why I decided to put it on this list. So, hey, if you're a red plant lover, like if you love red and pink on your plants in some capacity, don't overlook the white wizard because it's actually really, really beautiful and I actually really like it. I've been growing it for almost probably a year now. I think in 3 months I'll have had it for a year, 3 or 4 months. So I mean, I guess it's not technically almost a year, but it's been quite a while and it's grown a tremendous amount in that time, especially for me. I feel like I don't do a good job at growing plants from being like small into big plants. I feel like I generally keep plants small for some reason. This one is doing pretty good. Super happy with it and highly recommend the Philodendron White Wizard. The next one I want to talk about is actually going to be the last plant that I keep inside growing things. And that's gonna be my variegated Adansonii. I actually love my variegated Adansonii. And these were plants that I always kind of swore I would never buy, and I guess I never did really buy them. Well, I guess I bought one cutting technically once. But these were plants that were so expensive, and if you're kind of like newer to houseplants, like as of recently, you would have completely missed the massive craze that was variegated Adansonii. All of the different varieties, the normal Albo and the Aurea, and then the Indigo Mint, and then the Indonesia. Like there's so many varieties, Archipelago, and I have 3 different varieties. I don't know if I still have them. I actually haven't checked on them in a minute, but when I was writing down this list, they were like the first things that came to my mind, or I guess the 8th thing that came to my mind if you're counting. They grow really fast as well, and their variegation is really interesting. They don't grow normally, like the normal Adansonii, when they grow super fast. Like Adansonii, if you aren't familiar, grows so fast. These grow quite fast as well, despite being variegated, which I feel like is something the Monstera albo like doesn't do. Like the Deliciosa albo, that grows quite slow, and so does the Tycon. This in comparison grows quite fast. And there's something that I just always get excited about every time I go to a plant swap and there's one there. I never cease to like stop getting excited about it. I still have like the butterflies in my stomach. I don't know how to really explain it, but they're great. I've mostly grown mine from cuttings. I stuck them right into my moss walls and they do great. But these are plants that would also be really good growing in like leca or lechuza, or you can grow them directly in moss. You can also grow in soil, though I like almost never recommend soil. Ever. Unless you live in a really high humidity area, then soil's fine. Like everything else I tend to grow, the plants really like direct south-facing light, bright and direct south-facing light, or supplemented with direct grow lights. For example, mine get south-facing light and then also mother grow lights. Second to last plant on my list is gonna be string of pearls. I freaking love string of pearls. There's something with me in these like hanging all green chain plants where just like the vines, like them hanging down just looks so whimsical and wonderful. And it really creates like a celestial jungle look, which is really what I personally prefer. Like my indoor jungle, I want to be a lot of moss, vines, like stuff hanging from the ceiling rather than things growing up. And while I do have some plants growing up, like both of my Hoya australis I actually have growing up right now, I have a lot of things like vining down. My Syndapsis exotica is vining down a ladder. I really like it when plants are going down, and so I think that in the future, if I could, I would actually have multiple string of pearls. Something that I've seen people try to do is variegated string of pearls, and that plant I just feel like is really not viable for some reason. I don't think I've ever seen a healthy variegated string of pearls like outside of a store, and whenever I've bought like the smaller ones, they always die really fast, and I don't know if that's just like a baby string of pearls thing or if that's just like a variegated string of pearls thing. Things like this, they just have such a whimsical, wonderful look to them, and I want everything in my collection to give me the same feeling that like this gives me. I just know that string of pearls make me really happy, and it's something I think honestly everyone should have in their collection. Final thing I want to talk about is my Cactus Orb. I have a Cactus Orb. This is my Cactus Orb. I bought it over a year ago. We've had it for a very, very long time. Long enough that I've actually had to trim it, and I just fucking love it. I know that I don't know the name of any of the actual plants in here except for this one, Ripsalis, in the back, but Cactus Orb makes me so happy. Like I said, I really like celestial. I know celestial's like not the right word, but just like magical feeling forest vibes is what I want, and this makes me feel that way. I wish I could put it into words. Maybe you understand what I'm trying to say, but I need more of this. That's pretty much all I have to say. Everyone needs a Cactus Orb is what I'm trying to say. That is my video. Thank you for watching me rant about my favorite houseplants. These have been my favorite plants for a minute. I love them a lot. If I could, okay, like if I had full agency over my house, which I don't because I rent, I don't own, I would have hooks from all over the ceiling and then just like plants hanging from like random hooks all over the ceiling. So like instead of just in the window, there would quite literally be plants hanging from everywhere. There would be a log. I would have a log suspended with like plants hanging off of the log and then also potted onto the log. And there would just be like chains of vines everywhere. And that is my ideal plant situation. And that's what I try to recreate with, I think, the hanging plants. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me here today on this day. I hope that you have a good night, evening, morning, the rest of your day. I did a lot today. Quite literally did the laundry. I picked up my house, like my whole house, because I've been sleeping for the last like week and a half. I vacuumed, I did the dishes, took my meds again today for the first time. I actually didn't take them when I had COVID because the meds that I take keep me awake, and I was sleeping so much, and when I go to sleep on the meds that I take for my depression, I get night terrors. So I had to like stop taking them, which isn't ideal. And my therapist was like, hey, you need to be careful about that. And also about like really spicy thoughts. And I was like, hey, don't worry about it. I don't want to do those things even when I am sad. So I did everything. Like literally every single chore you could do in a day, I have done. Except I actually have to finish folding the laundry. So the laundry still exists as something that like needs to be finished being done. I mean, like I have swept, I deep cleaned the litter box, I cleaned the bathroom, I folded both of the beds, I vacuumed every floor. Everything is clean, you guys. I did it. I wish for you that same feeling of productivity. And then I filmed as well. I was almost like, you know what, I think I've done so much today that I deserve to not film. But then my friend was like, nah, you should. And I was like, you know what, you're right, I should. And so I did. Okay. I've been rambling, so I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.